Join us. Father, we ask you tonight, Lord, as we come together here, Lord, you'll give us the wisdom we need to make the decisions that's best for the people of Hendry County. Lord, be with the ones that are in harm's way tonight, Father, and in the Los Angeles area, Father. Keep them safe tonight. Keep the military safe, the police officers safe, Lord. And Father, here tonight, Lord, we pray that you'd be with our men and women of our Sheriff's Department here, Lord. Keep them safe as they do daily what they do, keeping us safe, Lord. Father, be with the fire department, the EMS workers, Father, as they do every day on the streets, Lord. Be with every man and woman ever put on a uniform, Father, to afford us the right to stand here tonight and pray to you, God. And Father, we thank you for all that you do for the constituents of Hendry County. And Father, we just pray that you would have your perfect will and way. And everything said and done here tonight would bring you glory. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, roll call, please. That's mine when I cut it on.
This is a budget workshop meeting of the Hendry County Board of County Commissioners being held Tuesday, June 10th, 2025 at 5 p.m. in the City Commission Chambers in Clewiston, Florida. In attendance are Chairperson Emma Byrd, Vice Chair Mitchell Wills, Commissioner Emery Howard, Commissioner Raymond Iglesias, Commissioner Michael Atkinson, County Attorney Matt Rollerson, County Administrator Jennifer Davis, and Deputy Clerk Sharon Congleton.
Thank you. Welcome to the Hendry County Budget Meeting. Y'all give me just a second. So at this time, we're gonna start our budget meeting. Look like they want the sheriff to come up first. Is that okay?
Yes, ma'am. The sheriff will come up first to present his budget. Thank you.
It was
You were all emailed a copy of the budget yesterday for your information, and then it looks like they have some handouts.
Hey, how you doing? Oh, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Sheriff, they thought you was special, isn't that something?
Thank you. Thank you.
Ready?
Rock and roll?
All right. Sheriff Steve Whitten for the record. Good evening, everyone. I want to thank y'all for allowing us to present our 25-26 budget request. So with that, we'll jump right in. Tonight, we've come before you to request an increase in our budget of $2.72 million. Due to the growth of our community, we are, like everyone else, experiencing a need to increase our budget. This increase will cover new position, new equipment, and a 5% COLA. As you can see, we're asking for a 5% COLA at $652,000. The FR rates are increased to $202,000. Health insurance is 5%. The new position that we're looking at, I want to explain that, are 2 community service aides. And what we're seeing is a lot of the deputies, a lot of their time is taken up by numerous calls that could be taken up by a community service aide. Now, most agencies run a large community service aide program. The pay is a lot less, so you're not having to come out of pocket with that deputy salary and everything that goes with it. Yet they can handle such things as, burglaries that are not in progress. They can handle certain traffic crashes, community checks, residential checks, VIN checks, anything that is not involved really in a crime in progress type of a situation. So that's why we'd like to give that a try this year and see if we can't get the budget, help the budget with these aides. And if these work out, we may look at more in the future, depending on our financial situation. Jail positions. We currently need 2 new jail positions bad. We just had our mock accreditation come in for the jail, and they said that we definitely need 2 more. I believe we're running around 280-something population, and we only have 266 bed spaces. And as Hendry County continues to grow, it's going to get worse and worse and worse. So, and that also leads into another situation we've already spoke about before. So. 1 civilian, we've grown tremendously in the past several years, and we're continuing to grow. So we're looking at 1 civilian, some sort of like a records clerk to help us out in the office. Operating expenses, operating has gone up $283,000. Axon, $500,000, and I'll talk about that here in just a little while, because that seems like a huge number, but it's really not when we talk about what all Axon does for us. So I'll be speaking about that later on in the presentation. And also, as well as IT upgrades, $390,000, and we increased the capital to $190,000. All right. Again, we're requesting a budget of $23,815,000, including this proposal is a COLA. With the decrease in surrounding counties' demand, we are not requesting a competitive adjustment. We are, however, requesting an increase across other areas. Personnel services, 17 million. Operating, 4,603,000. Capital outlay, 1,056,000. Debt services, $333,000, and a contingency of $50,000. I'm going to run through this. I know some of the other constitutionals are just dying to get up here, so I'm going to try to be fast for them. But we'll go.
Important.
Yeah, no, it is. We'll go over everything after we run through this live presentation. If you have any questions, just mark it, and we'll go back to it. So the total operating increase, as you can see, is $1.1 million. IT upgrades, $200,000. These are increases in various areas that provide support to our IT accounts, repairs, maintenance on current hardware, update technology, and FDLE and CJIS security implementations. A lot of these are mandated stuff that requires from the state and the government for security purposes. And also, I want to note, as far as the IT goes, we've had 2 hard attempts at breaking in our system recently, and we have daily attempts daily. So that is very important that we keep up on that, because, as you know, we've had other agencies near us, Highlands County, a few years back, they got hit with ransomware, and they were down for months and months and months. So that's a serious issue that we're dealing with. Operating increases, Axon. So Axon, people think, oh, they're tasers. Well, they are, but what they do for us is we run the body cameras. They do the GPSs in all our cars, so we know where the deputies are at. The fleet cameras, which are in the car, video cameras, investigative tools. And I can tell you that these cameras, number one, the cloud storage that they provide us with this cost is immense. If we were trying to piece everything that Axon does now, it would be into the multiple millions of dollars, I can tell you that. Cloud storage is huge. The investigative tools that they do, these vehicle cameras that are in the cars, they run 10,000 plates per day on an average. And that's, stolen vehicles, that's stolen plates, wanted people, missing people. So it's very handy. And it costs a tremendous amount to store all that data as well. They also do, anytime we have our body cameras, when they're running, they store that, which is used in evidence. State attorney uses it. So also, these cameras that we have will actually translate for us, so it cuts down on a lot, and it becomes a very huge safety issue for the people we're dealing with and the officers being able to translate it. Also, with Axon, every couple of years, we get new equipment. If something breaks, there's no questions asked. If we go into a pond trying to get somebody out, we get our equipment wet, it's run, they replace it. So there's no haggle, no hassle. It's replaced every few years with brand new stuff. New hire, total operating, we're looking at $144,000. The cost of ensuring the requested positions have all the essential items needed to perform these duties: uniforms, IT needs, equipment, and vehicle leases. It's all included. So the new hire cost that we're looking at with the 2 community service aides, the jail, 2 positions, current estimate cost, as you can see on the board, for uniforms and gear, $10,000, IT equipment, $10,000, and the lease vehicles are $1,000. And of course, they may vary. That's a rough estimate for you. New positions, again, we've talked about the community services, 2 at $231,000, and I've already explained the need for this, but this includes everything, and that costs of $231,000. The jail, again, I've explained that at the beginning, and they were actually told to us by the assessors that we definitely need 2 more positions in the jail. The one admin position, again, they would be cross-trained in both supply and accounts payable, allowing each section of the department to run with the efficiency needed to support our growing HC. So again, our people, they multitask and everything. Just a graph showing you the operating cost increases in comparison to this time last year. Fuel's down 2.68%. Tech costs are up 94%. And I asked this question when I saw that, 'cause I'm like, why is it so much? Well, it's because of the mandates from the state, the contracts that we have for the protections. It's a huge expense. But what's it worth down the line if someone breaks in and hits us with ransomware? You know, it's crazy.
But is the $500,000 that you're asking for Axon included in that tech cost?
No,
Strictly staff?
strictly, yep. Yep. Trinity Food Services, they're up 6.98%. But again, the more people we have in there, the more it costs. And I want you to know, you know, our program that we started, Jennifer, you'll remember because you were here way back when we started doing the notice to appear program. We still do all that. So we're not arresting anybody and holding them in jail that does not need to be there. If we can book them in and get them out, we do that to the best of our ability. So these are accurate, true numbers. They're we're not just stuffing people in there. We try not to do that.
And you also have, I think it's 112 was the report I got maybe yesterday of ankle bracelet. Otherwise, they would be in the jail. So
Yeah.
that's another program that they do. Otherwise, we would have that many people in the
Right.
jail.
How many ankle bracelets?
And 12,
They have a
And
pretrial,
that's run by the court services.
they have a pretrial that they do to keep them out as much as they can.
So if that's the case, I'm sorry, if that's the case, then if they fall ill, it doesn't fall under us anyway, right?
and make medical, it doesn't apply when
Correct.
they're house arrest, basically.
So there's savings all across the board with that program and the way that we do it with bringing them in, photographing them, booking them in, and RORing them back out on a notice to appear. So we're still doing that to the best of our ability. As you can see, we're
That being said, then that also hinders your inmate program of the workforce program, correct? I'm assuming, because that's some of the people you would use or no?
well, yeah, if they were remanded in, absolutely. But we still have enough, and we're still, you know, the county's still using the misdemeanor inmates to do the work. So
So the ones he's speaking of is the ones that when they booked in, if there's no reason to hold them, they let them on the hour. That way they won't be up under that window.
prime example, you know, if it's a nonviolent misdemeanor, non-person's crime or something serious, but it's a misdemeanor, we'll ROR them, give them a notice to appear.
The last couple of safety meetings has been pretty good with the amount of people that they're not trying to hold.
Right. Yes, ma'am. But the more inmates, the more people we get in Henry County, it's just going to keep climbing. So we're going to have to address that at some point soon. Total operating increases, 1.27. This includes all new hires, and it's just a breakdown. You can see, and you have it on your pamphlet there. Proposed budget for 25-26. Again, we do this every year. We compare Okeechobee County. And Commissioner Atkins, I know this is the first time on. I don't know if you've seen this before, but I think everybody else has. But we like to compare our county with Okeechobee because they are the one county that is very, very similar to us. So as you can see, the square mileage of Okeechobee County is 892 square miles. Hendry County is 1,190 square miles. The population of Okeechobee is 45,000. We are 47,000. County seats don't matter, but the last year's request is 27 million for Okeechobee County, and we're asking for 23 million. According to the World Population Review, the current population for Hendry County is 47,000. Now, I can tell you right now that's not accurate. It's a lot more than that. However, with a projected population growth rate of just under 5%, this means that by the beginning of 26, there will be an estimated 49,200 residents. If you'll remember, we had a conservative anticipated increase of 2%. This growth is evident throughout the county, which many proposed building requests in various stages. Vehicles calls for service, this is just a graph. This right here is the total traffic stops for January and May, from January to May of 2024. As you can see, calls for service, 4,797. 2025, the same time frame, we have right at 7,000 calls for service. So you can see we are growing in calls for service pretty substantially. Okay, again, this is just another 24-25 comparison. You can look at noise complaints, domestics, illegal burns, alarms, canine callouts. You can see the, I'm colorblind, I guess that's teal. Graph on the left is last year's 2025 budget, and the purple is this year, what we're dealing with. Road Patrol is a division of sworn deputies whose primary duties are to protect life, protect property, while providing crime suppression patrols throughout Hendry County. We're not adding deputies fast enough to keep up with the growth in Hendry County, and with a sudden building explosion, we are reaching a dangerous deficit in law enforcement's ability to provide a safe environment for our residents. Hendry County deputies with a secondary employment. Next. Oh. So the FBI national average, once again, is 2.8 officers per 1,000 population. Hendry County's estimated population is 47,000, but again, I think we can all agree it's higher than that with those who are here that are undocumented that we still have to patrol. That would indicate that Hendry County Sheriff's Office should have 132 sworn deputies providing law enforcement for Hendry County. We have 90 sworn law enforcement officers, not including the 14 SROs. So we have to take them out of the equation because they're not patrolling our streets. My staff and I are always searching for ways to improve Hendry County Sheriff's Office without adding more burden to the taxpayers of Hendry County. Together we can protect and serve our community to the best of our abilities. However, I need the support of the board to accomplish what the residents of Hendry County expect of me. So, thank you. Any questions?
Chair,
Yes.
so, fire to sale guy.
The new hire, sheriff, you got your community service, jail positions, and current estimated. I got a couple questions on that. I know you've been, for quite a few years now, you've been working on hiring locals, and I've seen quite a few locals. How is that program working? Are we still doing good?
Yes,
in
sir.
that?
We still give preference, but honestly, we have to hire deputies. So if we don't have enough locals to hire, we'll have to hire from outside, which a lot of those are working out great. But we are still, yes, sir, preference to locals. Absolutely.
For new positions, community service, what kind of training do they have to have? I'm just looking at that number, and I'm kind of curious to.
Yeah, well, they'll go through certain training they'll go through basically the same training, the after training that law enforcement goes to once they get out of the academy, on specific specialized training on how to work burglaries, how to run traffic crashes, business checks, that kind of thing. So they'll be trained after the fact.
I was just curious with that
Yeah,
number. I was wondering
and
what
I'm very interested in starting or trying this program because, again, the salary is a lot less, which would be a lot less burden on you as the financial source. And if we can get a lot of the calls handled with the community service aides and not taking the deputies off who are patrolling, running traffic. Oh, that's another thing I wanted to talk to you guys about. If you saw on your slide there, our traffic crashes have gone down significantly. And, we started the traffic units, and along with the grant, we've been running traffic hard. So those numbers are coming down, and we can accredit that directly to the heavy traffic enforcement that's been on the highways.
I have a question, the community service position, where they have to go through, they're going through the academy? They
No,
consider-
ma'am.
they don't
No,
have to
they're
go-
not, they're not a sworn law enforcement officer. They won't be carrying a gun. They will be in a marked unit, usually yellow lights, and they'll just respond to calls that are not in progress, and they can handle certain criminal complaints, burglaries, frauds, any kind of paper trail complaints that we get. But no, they would not be going through the academy, Ms. Bird.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Sheriff?
Yes,
I'm
ma'am.
sorry, if I may.
Go ahead.
Fender bender, so I know Collier County does this,
Mm-hmm.
because
Lee does, Collier does.
I see it quite a bit, and it looks like it saves quite a bit of, manpower from a
Yeah.
deputy, a sworn deputy perspective, and so
Yes, ma'am.
I think that's great.
Once they realize their position, don't think they're a police officer.
Right.
Yeah.
And you got to think too, when we get a pretty significant crash, you're taking 2 sworn officers off. And that's been part of our problem, and some of you have called me for issues that are going on. I'm like, well, sir, I've got 2 of them over here directing traffic on this fatality, and I got 2 on a domestic, we're out. So that would alleviate some of that, because they could work those crashes and instead of the law enforcement officers.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
sorry. Sheriff, I was looking at your line item on overtime. Has the increase in manning helped you keep that overtime at a steady level?
Yes,
'Cause
sir.
It hasn't changed in a.
Yeah, it would definitely help. But
Madam Chair,
Yes.
on that line item of personnel services on the original report that we received the email from Ann a couple of days ago, Jennifer, actually yesterday, the tech communication increase is 806,371. That's on this report,
okay.
a little bit different than what was on your comparison today. Can you dive into that a little bit more?
What's the difference?
From last year, it's 806,371.
Okay.
This is this line item 41, tech communications. Just to get some clarity.
The one you're looking at, though, is it the total, or is it, there's 3 different sections? There's a road patrol, a jail, and then a courthouse, and you have to add all 3 of them together. So you might be just looking at one of the
Okay,
components.
yeah, you're right. I got 776 on the other,
Okay.
All right, we're good.
Okay.
As we continue to grow, I know that you had mentioned before that you're gonna need other, like, satellite offices, right? So it seems like years ago you received a gift from CHL, and you have a satellite office in Portland Bell. How beneficial is that?
Huge.
Yeah.
We right now, especially in our situation now, we couldn't operate without that building.
Okay.
Could not.
So do you work, I know like Shane, he's got a 5-year plan on what he plans on doing on roads. Do you have an idea for the next 5 years what you're looking at?
We need a jail listen, I'm not going to be here forever, and it doesn't matter. Okay, so I'm not trying to but guys, like I said, we're maxed out. We're over max now. Who knows? I think we're going to have another population boom here in just a few years. And, most jails that from the time you start the process of funding, you're looking at 5 to 6 years before you can open the doors. So we need to really, and I'm not hammering anybody, but we really need to kind of get on this and really stay on it and try to figure it out and get funding wherever we can. And I'll work with you, Tallahassee, federal, whatever it takes. But we need to do something because Hendry County is going to need it. We need it right now. So we need to work on that together, I think. But we need to stay on it because I know it'll come up and then it kind of gets pushed to the side. And we just, and I get it. We get busy with a million things going on every day. But that's something we need to bring to the forefront and start working on, I think.
So I'm assuming that you communicate with Okeechobee County Sheriff Department?
I talk to
Have you
Noel
looked
from
at,
time
see
to
what
time.
that process
Yeah,
was to go?
I'm fixing to get with him and sit down, and that's one. And but yeah, I mean, I've talked to some lobbyists and people that are talking about helping us, and they're telling me the same thing. You're looking at 5 years by the time you start the process to get the funding till it's built. So
Jennifer, is that more of a federal dollar than a state dollar? I don't think in the next couple of years we're getting anything from the state.
well, what makes you mad is I found out that here just a few years ago, Hillsborough County got $8 million for a helicopter.
Yeah.
And here we are. I mean,
The highest and best use for money.
yeah,
that's for
in
sure.
my opinion, but yeah, we're going to need a jail. So I just think we need to bring that to the forefront and kind of start working on it together. But let's stay on it and see what we can get done.
One last question. Last year's budget, I believe we approved 15 new employees. Is that the number?
16.
So how did that work out? Did we
It's working
complete?
out, yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, it's definitely helping in that, and I attribute that is one of the reasons that our crime is dropping. But like I said, 16 years ago when I was coming up before the commission, I said, "Hey guys, we're going to be growing. We're going to be growing," and it was always a fight to get deputies. I mean, I might get one here, two here, one here. But there were some years we went with nothing, and I told them, I said, we're going to boom one day, and we're going to have to come out of pocket, and that's what happened last year and the year before. So I just want you to keep that in the back of your mind, because I just have a feeling that Hendry County is going to have another population boom here in the next couple of years, few years. So we might just want to stay on that. But again, we're looking at the community service aid, so I want to try a different route, something that's not so heavy-handed on the purse, but that can still have dramatic benefits to the county when it comes to law enforcement.
So
Commissioner.
I said one last question, but I want one more. Tell me, on the satellite offices, where would you put 2 right now if you had the space?
Don't know right now. Don't know. I mean, obviously Clewiston and LaBelle, but I mean, the satellite officers are satellite officers. I get that. We definitely need a maintenance facility, and we were looking at where our Port LaBelle annex is, because we have a little bit extra land there. But I was told that there is some other land that's come available for that. That would be better to get it away from that. But like I said, listen, my focus right now is satellite offices are great and they're nice. I mean, you know, we redid the one here in Clewiston. It looks really nice. If y'all haven't been there, you need to go inside. The guys did a great job on it. The one in Port LaBelle, I mean, it's holding its own right now. We are growing. We're going to grow out of it. But I think the main focus should be right now is figuring out how we can get a jail built.
That's all.
Commissioner Howard?
Madam Chair, thank you. Sheriff, I agree with you, and I'd like to put this on the table now, since we're discussing it. We may have a pod in front of us, maybe sooner than
Yeah.
later, but also, I think we'd be amiss if we did not start developing some sort of steering committee to get a jail on our radar now, rather than waiting for another year to pass.
Yeah.
So I think it's now,
Yes,
is
sir.
the time.
And we all right. I haven't did a walkthrough in a minute, but when I do the safety meetings, the numbers have grown, even with the residents that's outside. So I know the jail is coming. I know some people might not want that. I remember Commissioner saying, I'll build a school before I build a jail. But we still responsible for housing people, so, you know, and we just have to take a closer look at that.
Yeah.
Anyone else have any more questions?
Before God, I do want to say, I mentioned the mock assessors that come down to look through our books on the jail for accreditation, and they did recommend us for reaccreditation. So other than the 2 positions, which is correctable, they're going to recommend us for accreditation, so, to the assessors that come in.
You brought a big team today.
Oh, they're learning. They want to see the budget.
Thanks for all y'all do.
So, all right, any more questions? All right, thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Davis.
Yes, now, before you, Chief Stevens from the City of LaBelle Fire Department is going to come before you and discuss West Fire MSBU. As you all know, tonight at the board meeting, you are going to be approving not to exceed MSBU rates. We, as staff, went through all of our MSBU's. We'll talk about them in greater detail further in the budget process. But we are recommending to leave everything the same, with the exception of having this discussion before you. You all attended a meeting online recently with the consultant that the City of LaBelle hired for the West Fire rates, as well as Shane and Tommy have information regarding East Recreation. But with the exception of those 2 MSBU's, we're recommending to keep everything else as is. I will, while they're working that out, I'll remind everyone that the City of LaBelle has not met on this subject yet and doesn't have a formal official position. It's my understanding that they'll be meeting later this week regarding the same. The county underwent a MSBU study ourselves a handful of years ago, And when we adopted the rates, we did do an increase in the rates at that time, and we did the readiness rate. If you'll remember, we did the restructuring of our rates for readiness rates. There's two components, and knowing that in about 5 years that we would need to relook. But I think that, Ian, is that technically that would be next year. And we've been following, just to kind of answer maybe a question you might have ahead of time, we've been following that rate study. So it was projected out for 5 years. The city and the county, both cities and the county, we sat down and looked at those rates. We changed them for East and West Fire MSBU. And then every year, based off of what was projected for each one of those entities per year, that is what we have funded each and every, both of the cities accordingly. Okay.
For the record, Chief Brent Stevens, LaBelle Fire Department, thank you for having me here today. Before you, you have the financial analysis that all five of you have seen from Finch and Associates, and we are here to request today that the board make a to not exceed value, and we would request that it start at Plan 3 with possibly a reduction down to Plan 2 or somewhere in between. We believe that the city and the county can work together to reach a rate between Plan 2 and Plan 3 to achieve what the LaBelle Fire Department is looking to do per NFPA, as well as to help strengthen the ISO of LaBelle Fire Department.
Any comments, any questions? No one?
Madam Chair, I just wanted to sort of tee this up with this discussion. I want to say first that it's, in my opinion, that community risk assessment and standards of cover was pretty detailed, and I found it very, very helpful and enlightening in some instances. Some of the things they were able to drill down on was, I think, pretty impressive in looking at where we are today for call time, processing, turnout and travel time, total response. There wasn't quite, I mean, there's some things I think that they were missing, a couple of things. I'm not sure I agree with that there is no concurrency of responses.
I 100% agree with what you're saying. We just had it today. We had 4 calls drop in about 1 minute.
Yeah, and that's been the truth for a long time, so I'm not sure how that was missed, but it was. But other than that, it was pretty strong data that shows where we need to go. I think that we're not at the point, I don't believe, being able to really have this deep discussion that we need to have. We do need to see where the city of LaBelle's going to land, and we don't know that right now. So that's somewhat makes it difficult to go into the different plans and decide, where we're going to land. But I think there's some other things that Jennifer and I had talked about. We had talked about the 5-year rolling average, and maybe there's something that we can do there, and maybe some personnel things that we can deal with right now. But I think that this is one of the things that this study did show me is something that I believe to be true, and it was in the study that the West Fire MSBU has about a 3 to 5 year life on it, and it's going to be obsolete. I think was the word that was used. But when I asked him to get more specific, he said more 3 than 5 years out. So to get to the point where we need to be to meet NFPA standards on response and personnel, I think is a deeper discussion than what we can have here tonight. And that's my opinion, Madam Chair.
Anyone else?
Madam Chair, I've had several questions we've been discussing as far as this yesterday. We discussed it some today, and I do believe that, we know, between life safety is one of my big push pins. Everybody knows that. I've been on that for years now. But I do believe we need to take a deeper look at this to see, I agree with you, Commissioner Howard, there are some things that we need to look at. And the nice thing about this is we can always go down. We can't go up, so we got to keep in mind tonight, when we set our rates, we can always come down. But once they're set, there is no going up. So we need to keep in mind, if there's any doubt in your mind at all about which direction you're going to go, we need to set that not to exceed at a higher number and then come down to where we want to land. That's just my opinion on that.
Any other commissioner? Yes.
On the West Rec MSBU, we've got Pioneer, Felda, and the city of LaBelle, all in West Rec. How are we gonna,
Pioneers and East, Commissioner.
it's in East?
East, yes, sir. East, you said rec. Are you talking about rec?
No,
or fire?
not Rec, Fire,
Okay.
West Fire. So
Pioneer is.
Pioneer is in
mhm,
West Fire.
yes.
So how are we gonna do with volunteer departments versus a full-time department? How are we gonna do
So-
those MSBUs?
Well, right now, it's one MSBU for Felda, Pioneer, and LaBelle. And LaBelle is full-time. We are still volunteer. We are bringing forward a proposal that's within, though, our budget confines, our current budget confines, to you. Amy, Chief Stafford, will be bringing that before you later at another meeting to, and I'm not gonna call it a full-time, but it's a EMS, fire, it's another way to do it. So right now, as you know, we have Montura, where we have an ambulance in Montura during the day. But that station isn't certified for them to stay 24/7, so they go back into Clewiston at night. It would be the same thing for Felda and Pioneer. But with our current staff that we have that is dual certified for firefighter and EMTs and paramedics, we believe that we can start that process with our unincorporated fire departments, and we'll be presenting that to you to go forward. We're not looking to go full-time in the sense that the city of LaBelle's done. We're looking to combine our existing staff, EMS staff that's dual certified, and make that look a little bit different and position them where it makes sense at these stations, so there's coverage. But continue the volunteer. We're not looking to get rid of our volunteers. We still need our volunteers, but it would add an extra layer and consistency factor to our unincorporated stations. Does that answer your question?
Kinda. So I want to make sure that we don't do the same thing that LaBelle did. You know, it was not intentional, but we want to make sure we keep our volunteers
Right,
if that's what we're going to do.
right.
Because if we're not, you know, we have to look at the funding to make sure that we can support.
No, we're
Ahead of
not,
time.
we're not looking to do a full-time fire department. We're just looking to do dual certified, and most counties, I would say, also do that. I know I've had some experience even with Charlotte County and some other counties that do that. And it works very well, but we're not looking to get rid of our volunteers on the unincorporated stations, no.
But
And
we
back
need
to the rate,
Go ahead.
the last thing, I just want to make sure that our rates are consistent, that, you know, Pioneer and Felda's not paying full-time rates with a volunteer department. That's kind of where I'm getting
Right,
with the rate. Because if we're going to charge them all the same rate, you know, then, you know, of course, they're going to want full-time service. So that's kind of where I come
That's a
from. I
good
want to
point.
make
Very
sure
good
that
point.
they're
right-
getting the service they're paying for.
and right now, everyone pays the same rate to, you know, for east, west, and some of our recreation. So that's the way it is, set up right now.
Jennifer, you had mentioned, Madam Chair, Jennifer, you had mentioned that you compared it to what Charlotte County's doing, but we got to remember, they got a bigger pool to go from, so we got to make sure that we're comparing ourselves to a rural county that,
I'm just talking about the
Dual
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 certification.
services,
Yeah.
yes. Anyone else? So thank you.
Yes, ma'am, thank you.
Now we will go into our East Recreation discussion from the outside of the fire, West Fire MSBU. This is the only MSBU that we were recommending an increase. If you'll remember, last year, staff came before you and was recommending an increase for East Recreation, and the board asked that we put it off another year. So here we are, another year later, and with the current expenses, we've got to realize some type of increase or some type of different structure in which we are levying those funds. And so Shane's before you, he emailed also, and I think passed out in hard copy, an analysis of East Recreation. And it was done, I'll just go over the summary portion and then I'll turn it over to Shane. On the first page that you have, you'll have what we considered a base rate. And so the base rate was pretty much just kind of backing into what the numbers look like. As you know, we have a agreement with the city of Clewiston for $150,000 a year, and there's 5,043 units in the MSBU as a whole. And so if you take the 150 and divide it into 5043, you'll come up with 2974. So just, I won't go through every line item, but that was the idea of taking fixed expenses in that MSBU and then backing in to a per parcel line item of what that looks like. And then we did the expenses that we, overhead for property appraiser, tax collector commissions, admin fees, which is insurance and things like that, reserves, and we came up with $45.32. Then the summer camp fees were calculated for the YMCA and some of the other expenses associated with that, as the pool, lifeguard expenses, et cetera. And that came up with another per unit charge of $19.66. On the next page,
hold on, Jennifer, does that YMCA number need to be there?
the YMCA number is summer camp.
Okay, the U.S. Sugar dollars, we didn't use that for that. It's only for the family members that have multiple.
Yes, that's
families.
offset.
Okay.
That is not in addition to. You won't see that here because that's an in and an out. This is the actual net expense that we realize on the contract that you entered into for the YMCA.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
question on the YMCA. Is there any other recreation departments that pay for summer camp out of recreation? The ones that I've seen, the people coming to the camp pay to go to the camp. So I'm just asking, are we the only one doing this? Or,
So this money was offset for East Rec before I came on, and so we chose to use it for East Rec. So anybody could go, and they do pay, but if they have 10 kids, then we offset some of that, but they do pay to go.
So, Madam Chair.
Can you answer that question, or can Tommy answer that question? So you're
West side.
speaking, so the
West
west
side.
side pays,
We supplemented West Side. This year was the first year we've done this for an amount of $27,000.
okay.
We did that to come up to what the board was doing, as well as on the east side, they've been doing it for quite a few years, but we did start on the west side as well.
And then the city of Clewiston, does anybody know that if they do that?
the city of Clewiston, the
Doesn't-
parent has to pay.
Okay, so it's a wash.
Yeah. The city doesn't pay any part of it.
Okay. So the west side does, to answer.
We just started this year, correct?
Okay.
Yeah.
Commissioner Howard? Okay. Thank you.
On-
Any other comments
So,
or
yeah,
questions?
clarify that, Mitchell. So West Rec is subsidizing the YMCA program, is that correct?
We did. We put 27,000 in to help with that. We just didn't get the U.S. Sugar dollars, just saying. But we put the 27,000 in to help with it, yes.
So does that cut down the cost per child?
Yes, that's
Is that
correct.
what- So it's a discounted rate?
Right. So it drops the family's case to about $45 rather than the normal cost. So it helps get children there that wouldn't normally be able to go. It also helps pay for that second child, third child, whatever the case may be. That's what it's for.
But Michael, you were a commissioner. Do you remember, so the city of Clueston summer camp is not subsidized one nickel?
No. They provide the lifeguards. That was all we done with the pool when I was on the city commission. Now they're back, they got away from YMCA, and they're back doing it themselves this year. And none of it is subsidized at all.
So for the record, there was a donation for East and West Rec. They chose to fix a building. We chose to accommodate the community what was donated. So that's why we subsidized with that. That's where that fund come from.
Are you speaking of the U.S. Sugar
The US
money?
Right.
So the U.S. Sugar money was donated many years ago, and we keep that separate.
Correct.
And one of the allowed uses is when there's multiple children, then there's a discount,
That's the way I understood it.
and then they,
For extra kids.
through the
That was for
process,
East.
when folks sign up, they calculate that, and that amount of money is deducted from the
Okay,
U.S.
not
Sugar
West.
money to help pay towards the YMCA contract, correct? Yeah, but it's usually just a few $1,000s a year. It's not a huge figure.
Madam Chair, I thought, didn't we hire a program director for East Rec some time ago? How, Tommy, you're determined to speak, all right? I know you want to speak, so I'll address you.
Good afternoon, Commissioners.
So how long have we had a program director?
We've had Demetrius now for a year.
Okay, and shouldn't, I thought it was my understanding that if we hired a program director, that they would be able to run a summer camp, no?
No.
Madam Chair, I think they're more of scheduling, isn't that correct? Scheduling events and things throughout the years, what they do, the program director?
Program manager, yes, sir.
Right.
And well, have we done anything? I mean, I haven't been known of any events that we've done.
He's
Okay.
been doing them throughout the year in the gym. Also the ones that he does, he offset with the YMCA, so he does programs in and out. So he does normally send a schedule out of what he's doing with the kids.
Right, but I thought, if I recall correctly, I thought when we were having this discussion years ago, the intent was for a program director to do things within the East Rec District and get with those other communities. Is that not what it was intended for?
It was.
Tommy, maybe?
It was, but my knowledge, he did try to do that. They did put forth the effort, we put forth the effort, so, and it didn't work like that, but he continued to.
Feedback is horrible.
But they did put forth the effort, met with Pioneer in different areas, but I can't tell you exactly, but it wasn't working. You know, you're trying to meet with people, they don't schedule, but we went forth to do what we needed to do, and when they didn't, comply, there's nothing else we could do. So he continued doing what he was doing, so he continues his part on this side, so.
So what you're saying is there's a calendar though with all the events, we can get that and we can share that.
Right.
We'll share that with the commission.
So the last thing, the clarification, the first child is paid for through East Rec. Correct. The second, third, fourth child is
It's
paid
paid
through
through the U.S.
Sugar.
Sugar donation. Yes,
They
sir.
might have $5 off or
A
10.
portion.
A portion of it, maybe they lose, maybe they get a $5 deduction, depends on how many kids it is, though.
So that's the second, third
Right.
on gets
I think it's
deducted.
after the third. Don't quote
But-
me on, but I
But
think
the
it's.
first child still pays.
Right,
The first child, say that again?
I think it's the first and the second, and then, I'm sorry, y'all, the echo. It's the second, but it depends on how many kids it is, so, but it's like a $5 deductible, and it goes like that. So I don't have it in front of me.
But from what I understood, Madam Chair, is that right there pays the first child. And then children after that, they get a deduction according to that, and that's paid through the grant from U.S. Sugar.
That is correct.
That's correct, right? So
Yes.
that's the same thing we're doing. The first children, that 27,000 pays for the first child. Lord Jesus. I'm praying for you, brother. Just accept it.
He's trying.
The first child is through, that's what that money's for,
Through the
correct?
$32,200.
Yes, and the 27,000 same on West Direct. And then from that child, from the deductions from second child on, comes from that proportionate from that U.S. Sugar
Third
dollar.
to the fourth, and to
Right,
the fifth, and so
that's,
forth.
It's the opposite.
yeah.
At the last meeting, you all had requested that we look at the expenses from a geographical perspective. And so I had shared with you that staff had been tracking that for the last 2 years, and then sent you a report from 24, and then I think year-to-date of 25 of what that looked like. This is another, the same type of analysis, but it's going forward from 25 to 26, and it's got it separated by the areas of Hookers Point, Harlem, Mid-County, Flag Hole, and Midway Acres, Montura, and then 720 Skyland, basically the rest of the county. And so you'll see the expenses per location, and then you'll see the number of units, the homes associated with each geographical area, and then you'll see the per unit cost associated with each one of those expenses. And so if you were to go to the last page, and we can come back and talk about this in more detail in a minute, but if you'll go to the last page, you will see there's 4 potential proposals for you to consider for tonight. The first one is the previous page we just went over, and it would be by location, and broken down into 6 different locations, and each location would get its own rate based on the expenses in that location. The second alternative would be that you take the total number of units and you spread all the expenses for the whole MSBU and divide it evenly, including Montura, because you'll remember, right now, the rate is $100. With the exception of Montura, it's $40. The second alternative would be everybody pays the same rate. No matter where you live, everybody pays the same rate, and that would be $101.06. So it would only be a $1.06 increase for everywhere but Montura. And they would have a $61 increase in 6 cents. And then alternative 3 is Montura would pay 0, because there's been some discussion about that, because they're $2.98 and so forth. And then the remaining expenses spread across the remaining units, and that would go to $151.10. And then the last alternative would be for Montura to pay a minimum of the $64.98 is what was considered to be the base rate, and then take the remaining expenses and spread it across the remaining units, which would be an $18.92 increase across the board.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair. Jennifer, can you say that increase any more time? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry?
What was the increase?
$18.92.
Thank you. That was on alternate,
Alternative 4 on the third page.
that's for everyone?
It would be everyone except Montura,
Montura.
and Montura would get a $24.98.
Right.
So it's just it's a philosophy conversation amongst the board. You know, we just heard talking about the fire, just as, you know, a premise of, well, one shouldn't pay, they shouldn't pay the same as everybody else because they don't have a full-time. It's the same conversation here. Historically, the county, right, wrong, or indifferent, the county has had rates across the board in any given category, with a few exceptions, and one of those is Montura. But for the most part, is that a fair statement? In all of our, mostly all of our MSBUs, whether it's lighting, drainage, roads, we do the same rate across the board in that specific MSBU.
Correct.
We need to vote on tonight which alternate that we would like.
Yes, ma'am. So tonight will be your not to exceed rate, for, and so you won't make, you can give feedback obviously now because it's a workshop, but you won't be voting until the board meeting on this subject.
And Jennifer, this doesn't include any foo-foo stuff or high-end maintenance. This is
This is bare minimum.
bare minimum in all four alternatives.
But we don't have to vote on this tonight, right?
You do have to vote tonight, you just don't vote right now.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
So, Mr. Parker, Westrack is at 185, is that right? I'll look through, I got it on the paper too, I'm sorry, I should just look, but I figured you might have it on the top of your head. Westrack. One's,
One-
oh, I'm sorry, the wrong number there. Yeah, we're at 150.
150,
So that's 150 across the board there.
right. Last
Oh.
year, you raised just the dwelling unit. You didn't touch the RV rental parks or hotels and
Right,
motels.
we just moved that up, it was actually $50, wasn't it? Or was it 75?
No, I thought it was 125.
Okay, well, so the reason I'm asking the question, Madam Chair, is if you move that rate, so it's only $18.92 different than $118. So if we went with that third alternative, except added that $64.98 to Montour, so they're still paying, they have skin in the game, that's gonna increase your budget a little bit, but it's not gonna be that much of an increase either, really. I mean, what are you adding there to it, another $30?
So you're
So
saying,
you're wanting to go up 24.98 on Montour is what you're saying?
I'm saying, yeah, because they're at $64.98 on alternative 4.
That's four, I
There-
thought you said three.
They're
No.
currently on at 40.
I'm looking at 3, is what I'm looking at, so it's all 150, 110. So what I'm saying there is leave that all at 150, 110, except Montura. And I would either put them back at the 64.98 or the 40, but I would increase it a little bit. It's got to be at least some sort of an increase, I think, to make it across the board correct. That's just my opinion.
The 6498 would generate, if you're looking at alternative 4, the 16 said $108,516.
And that would take your budget up to $627,000, correct, roughly? I'm just off the top of my head.
Looking at 4, 3, 4.
I'm at 3. But when you take that 108 and you add it to that 509, it should be about,
All right, but let's look at, it costs $212 per dwelling unit in the community in Harlem,
that's on number 1, yes.
okay? They have more parks, more facilities within that community. It seems like they should be able to pay a bigger share with them having more facilities.
I'm not opposed to that. I was just bringing the conversation into play here with number 3 and 4, but we can look at this however you'd like. I mean, I have the same situation. We're gonna revisit West again.
Right.
Not tonight, but we are gonna revisit that as well. Because I can say the same thing. I've got a lot of parks here and nothing here and nothing there, and so, but tonight, for consideration, I guess what I'm saying is if we look at the higher number, we can always lower it, Commissioner, but we need to take into play and account, like you said, all the parks, the facilities, the gym comes in, the pool comes in, so there's a lot to that you can look with that.
Commissioner Wills, so you were looking at number 3, and Montour would be 64,
98.
98, thank you, and the rest at 150, 110, correct?
Yes, I was just looking at alternative 3. So, but again, Commissioner Iglesias, guys, I mean, you got to go, it's a valid point.
Yeah.
So you could adjust those numbers a little bit, but either way, but, what would your pleasure be on that, just looking at it?
I mean, with us just getting this here tonight, I mean, I'd like to dig in a little bit
Right.
more. However, I don't know. I mean, I went back to 2000 and I think it was 1. Harlem had their own recreation
MSBU.
MSB. It changed, not sure why, what that conversation happened, but, I struggle with my district. I represent both sides of the county. I don't have one park on north of 27. Y'all have heard me scream this before. Montour I represent 25% of Montour, and they handle their own recreation within the 298 district. Port LaBelle, I represent 1 out of 13 or 12 out of 13 units. I don't have one park within my district. It's not that I want to go out and have more parks, but I do want some equal pay. So I don't know. I'm not going to support Montura going up. I really like the idea of Montura not having a fee, but if they're going to have a fee, I feel comfortable with leaving them at the 40. But I think Harlem needs to pay more than the others. What that number is, I don't know. I know that we're going to set a number tonight of not to exceed, and then we have time to work on that and change that moving forward. But
So Harlem do have more parks, but I like to keep it across the board like it was. I know Montura have nothing at all, but
Well, they have their own recreation. They do have a pool out there, but that's done throughout Central County, so.
to satisfy and to look at it equally, I would not take that rate up as high. Yes, they do have more parks, but it's not their responsibility that somebody donated a park to them and put somebody's name on it. So, it's part of the county responsibility as well as it is the residents in every district. So, I would go with the 151 and, with auction 3 or either 4. So I'll either do alternate 3 or alternate 4.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I'm with Commissioner Iglesias. Montura, they take care of their own recreation. We do pay in a portion to the city for people that use their facilities, which I think that number really needs to be looked at. Did we get any data on how many kids played soccer, baseball?
No.
I know they're talking about going to the schools and finding out how many kids live in the county versus how many lives in the city, which isn't a
Right.
clear picture of how many actually impact those facilities.
So I've griped about that for years. Actually, I dug into the interlocal agreement, and the interlocal agreement, although the discussion came about with Commissioner Turner, former Commissioner Philip Rowland, Steve McCown, and Bubba Raymer back in the day when they were going to charge the residents of unincorporated county a higher fee, I kind of ran with that. Unfortunately, the interlocal agreement states that's not what the money goes for. It actually does go to facilities. I didn't realize that. All right. The other thing that the interlocal agreement states is that the board, they would create an East Rec board that would allow 2 Hendry County commissioners, I believe 1 school board commissioners, I believe 2 city commissioners, and then I think some volunteers, whoever wanted to sit on the board. That being said, that board was created and fizzled out, not till I would say probably about a year ago, 8 months ago. The city recreated a recreation board. I don't think it's called an East Rec board, but it's not set up in the manner that what we're paying the $150,000 goes for. That being said, Jennifer, I'd like for you to reach out to Danny Williams, your co-park, and see if we can alter their existing board. I don't know if they have bylaws or what they're under, sunshine law, I'm assuming they are. And let's get the framework of what the original interlocal agreement states, and let's get, I would like to sit on that board as a county commissioner. I don't know if,
As well.
but we need representation on there to see what we can do to help things along. But if we're gonna pay the $150,000, that's part of the agreement, then we need to have the East Rec board as, you guys operate somewhat with West Rec. I mean, yours is a little bit different. But anyway, we need to have that board and representation on there.
But I remember when, before that came in play, they was charging, I want to say 200, it was more anyway, regardless of the cost, they charged them more, the unincorporated, more for their fees, so I'm not sure exactly how much per child.
The idea was that when Steve McCown became city manager, he started looking at numbers. There was actually a baseball rec board that handled the baseball within the city limits. Steve McCown wanted to take that over, and in doing so, he was an accountant by trade, and that's where the discussion came about. It says, we're going to charge more for unincorporated, and Carson just ran with it and says, absolutely not, never going to happen. Commissioner Rowland had supported that, and then they came up with this agreement. There again, I would have liked to see a set of numbers based on the roll call per se, or attendance from the unincorporated constituents. That to me would be a fair number. Hey, we might owe them 300 grand. If that's the case, then so be it. But I don't think that's the case. I don't think that the people from, I think there's a handful of people from Montour, probably one person from Ladika and Pioneer. I mean, I think it's very limited. I think you've got some people from Harlem, and you've got people from Hooker's Point, but how much are we paying? I don't know how you equate that. We don't have any metrics.
And I think we could even look at it and do it like we do YMCA. You know, we pay whatever that difference is. If it's $50 per kid, we pay, you know, if they have 200, we pay the difference. But the $150,000 is to turn over, you know, and not have any documents to really show what it's for, or any say with it. It's kind of hard to cough up money. You know, I've got Flagler, Ladika, neither one of them have anything. Montura has its own stuff, so, you know, Montura, I'm really not in favor of raising. And I'm not really in favor of everything being the same across the board. I do think that the communities that they're in, they do need to have a larger buy-in. Maybe it's not full, because, you know, other people do have the opportunity to go into those parks.
Yeah, I don't
But-
see that increase
but-
either for Flaghold or Mid-County.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
so I'm trying to stay neutral here, and it's tough. Between a rock and a hard place. I don't think the board is the answer to your issues. Our board is a rec board. I've been jumping back and forth on the fence about coming to you guys and saying, let's be done with that. City, county, let's move forward. I'm still not off that fence, to be honest with everyone up here sitting here, and everyone listening here, online, whatever the case may be. I'm not happy with the system we have in place with that right now. And if you really want to have an argument, let's talk about the hospital. Maybe that'd be a better night to talk about that rather than tonight. So when you're looking at these MSBU's, let's look at all of them.
Well, we don't have any control over the hospital. They're their
But we
own.
control what we do with the hospital. We got a voice in that. So I can tell you on the LaBelle side, my butt's been chewed so much, I don't have one left.
I'm with
About a
you.
hospital that we don't use.
Port LaBelle. They're all going to Lehigh.
So let's just focus on this tonight, and that's a conversation we can have later, and we will have it. When you look at these MSBU's, everyone has the opportunity to use these parks, okay? So, and I get it, Montour has their own thing. None of those kids out there are told they can't come here, and if they play Little League Baseball, they do come here. If they play Little League Softball, they do come here. So when you look at it this way, we gotta make sure that everybody still has a proportionate part of this payment. They all are going to use this park eventually. Whether the parks are used for playground or whatever the case may be. If they play basketball, they're going to use these facilities. So we need to keep that in mind. I don't think anyone should not pay nothing. Again, we look at West Rec, Willer Estates, they're locked in Lee County. They can't even go home in Henry County yet. Been that way forever. But yet they pay the same recreation, they pay the same mosquitoes, they pay the same everything. But they have absolutely nothing, and they can't go home without going to Lee County. So we just got to come to a number tonight that says, hey, we're not going to exceed this number. This is what we're looking at, and I believe that's where we're at. You know, we can kick the ball down the field all night long, but we got to come to a number and say we're not going to exceed this, and let's really drill down on it then as a group of us together with staff.
Madam Chair, I think if we take that mindset, alternate two is the most fair way to start tonight at the not to exceed rate. That's just my opinion.
And that's all we voting on tonight, so that we will come back.
You can come down in September.
You always come down, you just
Yeah.
can't go up.
Okay.
So, Madam Chair, question, commissioners, as we're all sitting here discussing this. How would you feel a not to exceed rate, alternate 3, and putting Montour back at $40?
Can I make a comment?
Yes.
Absolutely.
The minimum, I would just ask for your consideration, for Montour to be at a minimum of 4532, because that is that was the bare minimum overhead that everybody, it would be a $5.32 increase.
So it's 4532, and that, if we did option 3, with that added in there, Commissioners, could you live with
Okay,
that?
where are you coming up with that number, Jennifer?
That's on page 1, under general expenses.
Your base rate sheet, 8.5 by 11 sheet.
Then you can always whittle down from
We
there.
can whittle down from there.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Like 76.
So you're saying option 3, everyone at 151.10, except Montour at 45.32, and then that's the not to exceed, and then we work down from there. So if we wanted to go up to,
You can't go up, but you can go down.
Only go down.
If you give me a second, I can, if you would be agreeable to the 4532 for Montura, let me,
I don't want to increase for Flaghole. I don't want to increase for Mid-County.
if you give me 1 minute, you could,
This is the problem where nothing's changed over years.
Well, that's why we got the opportunity. We can whittle on it and work on it. That's why we're here.
you
You're a numbers
could,
guy, so it's good.
you could decrease the 151 to 129. And still bring in the same amount of money. Instead of 151, it would be 129, and then Montura would be 4532.
So with that being said, Commissioner Iglesias, if you look at that 151, so if you can go down to 120,
129,
129, so you're saying, Harlem should pay a little more. So if you adjust these numbers, maybe they're paying a little more, so you're making up that 129 difference, and you're taking it off on another community. So you're not raising those other communities up at that point. But you'd still have a not to exceed rate at that point.
if you, just for clarification, did I understand to say to put Harlem at 151 and then,
What? No,
If-
ma'am, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Oh, 129, and then, Montour at 45.32.
Yeah, let's look at that. Let's look at Harlem at 151, the rest at 129, with the exception of Montour, and leave them at 45.32
you could do one.
as a not to exceed.
Right,
Could
yeah.
do a 151 for Harlem, not to exceed, with everybody else at 120, with Montura at 4532.
I'll make that.
Again,
So it's
oh,
one,
listen,
so it'd be
we'll
a
vote later.
$20 increase for, it'd be a $5.32 increase for Montura. It'd be a $51 increase for Harlem, and a $20 increase for everybody else,
120, JD?
120.
And then everybody else, Harlem be 151 flat?
51.
Mm-hmm.
I think she's saying 151 flat.
She
I'm
said
sorry, what, I'm sorry?
151.10.
151.10 or
No,
150?
151 even.
Even,
Okay.
and everyone else at 120 even. And then 45.32
For Montura.
Montura.
We could make it 45 even. We can do even numbers. We'll be fine.
Yeah,
What
but-
what increase is that for them now? They're at 40 now?
Just $5.
It'd be $5.
$5 increase.
All right, we don't have to vote on it right now, right?
No.
And that would get us to the same number of the 509, 648?
508,
Same thing with the
275.
120.
Close enough.
Pretty close. All right.
But you had the same
508.
number, you could have had
Close
the same
enough.
number at 129, but across the board, it would have been the same thing.
Okay.
And that's only $9 difference. Because they feel one area have more parks, they want to see the increase. But when you pull in the same amount of money with 129,
Well, Madam Chair, I can understand the, Pioneer, Montour areas, because Pioneer has a clubhouse, but that's all they have, and they do have a small playground. But, that being said, what, you're gonna get folks that's gonna say, why am I paying this? You know, I have nothing there for it, so I do understand the argument. It's a good conversation, so. Who's next?
Next, anybody else?
So if that's it, we can adjourn and then.
So there's nothing else to be said. We're gonna adjourn and come back in 5 minutes.